Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? It's our first weekend, us 49er fans, it's our first weekend without our 49ers. And, for the remainder of the season. But that's the way it is, just the way it goes. But there's been a lot of news lately about the 49ers in the news. And I got to tell you though, that now that our season's over, it is such a relief because now we can concentrate on the draft, free agency, and all these things. And there's been news, regarding the 49ers lately. It turns out that, there's been all this talk about Antonio Brown and Odell Beckham Jr., and maybe the 49ers being interested in getting them. Should those teams want to trade with the 49ers? You know, uh, I'm not going to get my hopes up about them. I'd love to have them with the 49ers. I mean, Jimmy G and Nick Mullins could sure use them. I mean, we could use weapons on offense. Because that's one of the things that we don't have. We don't have that big star receiver, and it would be really neat if we can get one of those guys. I would love to have both actually, but a lot of people say, when it comes to those two receivers, which one would you want? Would you want the one that's the youngest, which would be Odell Beckham Jr., who I believe is 26, and Antonio Brown, I believe, is 30, and I think he turns 31 in July, and Odell Beckham Jr. turns 27 in November. But but you know, people say it'd be better to have Odell Beckham Jr. because he's a lot younger. The thing is, though, between the two, Odell Beckham Jr. is actually more injury prone. They say he gets injured a lot. So would you rather have the guy that's older? Would you rather have the guy that's younger or the guy that's less injury prone? I'd say you'd go with the guy that's less injury prone, which is Antonio Brown. But there's no guarantee that the Steelers are going to make a trade with us. And and I don't really care about the whole diva thing. Because people say you don't want a diva on your team. Well, the way I look at it is I can care less whether these guys are divas or not. We need help. We need a big star receiver. See, I look at these certain things. Hold on a minute here. I I look at these things here. Um, I would I would rather have receivers. There's things that I like in a receiver. Athleticism. I like their skill and what they bring to the team, their play, how good they are. Those are the things that matter. I don't care about whether they say something outrageous to the media or they do something silly or arrive at training camp in a helicopter like Antonio Brown did with the Steelers. I don't care about that. What I care about is what they bring to the team and what as far as what they do on the field. But like I said, there's no guarantee about getting those guys. Another thing too, I also believe, I would not want to give up that second pick in the first round for either one of those guys. I don't want to, because that second pick in the first round is important. I would not want to make a trade for those guys for that pick. I'm sure the Steelers and the Giants would want to, but that's a something we need to hold on to because in the draft, I would like to see the 49ers pick up, maybe Nick Bosa or Josh Allen. Um, I tell you though, there's no guarantee that Nick Bosa will be taken by the Cardinals. It's possible. It's possible that maybe he'll be maybe the Cardinals will pick somebody else up and maybe Nick Bosa will be available for us. But I have to say too, like Josh Allen, he is pretty good. And from what I've seen, he's a pretty good player. And if we don't get Nick Bosa, I'd be happy with Josh Allen. The one thing I hope the 49ers do not do in the draft is trade down. You know, we're in a situation where we need to go after the best that we can get. I don't want them to trade so far down that we get guys that are kind of all right, or kind of good. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want us to draft guys who are average, mediocre. I don't want to do that. I want stars. That's what I want on the 49ers in this offseason. I want stars. And when we draft, I do not want them to trade down. I want them to go after that big name player, because we need all the help we can get. This is going to be a very important offseason for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, because if all doesn't go well, there's a possibility they could be in trouble. If the 2019 season looks anything like the last two seasons, you know, it's gonna the message that comes across is that there's been very little change. There's been no change at all, and we don't want that to happen. So they don't want that to happen, because if it shows that there's very little change, possibility is they could be they're John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, their jobs could be on the line. So it's really important for them to get this thing turned around as soon as possible. And I think they're going to try to do that. I think just recently they fired Ray Wright, and he's the conditioning and strengthening coach for the 49ers. Now, over the last couple of years, he's been the 49ers have been getting a lot of injuries. They got a lot of injuries this season. I think 13 guys were out for the season, and then the year before that, even more guys. So we can't have this. The conditioning and strengthening coach has to be changed. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they addressed that. Ray Wright has been fired and removed, and now they'll be looking for somebody else to replace him. Also, this whole thing with free agency, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr. I wouldn't, who knows? John Lynch may want to go after those guys. There's no guarantee, and that probably won't happen. But I'm pretty sure that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan realize that they have to really get on the ball right now and get this thing rolling. And because see, when the team is building for the future, and let's say maybe 2 or 3 straight years they don't make the playoffs, but they're showing improvement, they're winning more games, they're showing improvement in a lot of areas, then that's passable. But if the team in its third year looks the same as it did when this new regime arrived, then it's going to show that there hasn't been any progress, and their jobs could be on the line. So this is going to be an important offseason for them. It's going to be an important offseason for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. So I suspect that they may just do fine in the draft. I think they're going to be probably more aggressive in free agency. If they're not those things, I'd be really surprised. But they need to get it going. They need to get it going as soon as possible because, like I said. Now, Jimmy G, I guess, was talking the other day. He's feeling great. He can't wait to get back on the track, with his team and go out there. I really believe that Jimmy G is going to have a good season next season. Some of you out there may disagree with that because I know there's a lot of haters against him, but I believe that he'll be better next year because one thing, everybody's talking about Nick Mullins and the season that he played well, and a lot of people are talking about that, and he knows that he's got Nick Mullins right behind him. Plus, Jimmy G is also hearing the criticism. He's hearing people say that he's a waste of money. He hears that, and plus, after the way his season ended, I'm sure he's eager to get back out on the playing field and play again. So, it I have to believe that he's going to be ready to go when the season starts. And a lot of the team doctors and coaches say that they expect him to be ready by training camp, which I believe is in May. So we'll see how that goes. Um, and the 49ers, I really feel confident about in the direction they're going. We got to realize we had a lot of injuries this year, and I think if our guys stayed healthier and Jimmy G didn't get injured, we would have had more wins. I really believe that. Um, and I think another thing too is our schedule. If we have a good draft and a good free agency next year, when we play, when we play those games next year, I think this. I think there's a lot of winnable games on our schedule. I heard people say, "Oh, this looks tough." I don't think so. If you look at most of those teams on the schedule, a lot of them were below 500. They were below 500. In my last video, I talked about teams that didn't make the playoffs. I was basically trying to say that those teams that didn't make the playoffs were below 500, and they weren't. They weren't that good. So those ought to be winnable games for us. Those teams could be improved. I mean, it's possible. But I'm just looking at the schedule, I do see tough teams on there, like the Rams. Of course, we play twice. The Saints will be on there. The Seahawks will be on there. The Ravens will be on there. Um, you know, and I don't know. There's other teams on there that have gone to the playoffs. The Steelers, though. The Steelers didn't make the postseason, but they were above 500, and they should have and could have made the playoffs, but they came up short. So that's one team that could be tough too. But I see a lot of teams on the schedule below 500. So I don't. I think next year's schedule is actually going to be easier than this season's schedule. So there's another thing that the 49ers have going for them. I mean, but they got to stay healthy. They got to stay healthy. Got to have a good draft. Have good free agency, and the sky can be the limit. I know that right now our team is being made fun of, being laughed at. We're not getting the media attention we used to get, but that's all gonna change. Now, I'm still cautiously optimistic about next season, but I am nevertheless optimistic, and I do think that we'll be better as long as we don't have those injuries. Those injuries killed us. We'll have Jimmy G back. We'll have Jerick McKinnon back, and we'll have a very healthy team back. You know what I also read in the news too is that Kittle, George Kittle, that in those last few games of the season he was playing with sore ribs, or something like that. I don't know if it was a cracked rib or sore rib, but he was playing in all few of those games with that injury. Could you imagine if he was 100% in those games? He probably would have been able to do more. He's a good player. He plays through pain. He plays through pain and does and does very well out there when he plays. So I'm really happy that we have George Kittle. He'll definitely be an asset next season, and him and Jimmy G are going to work good together. But we'll just see how next season goes. Did anybody watch any of the playoff games today? I watched them. That first game though, between the Texans and the Colts, I got to tell you, the Colts look pretty darn good. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they could cause a lot of damage in the AFC in the playoffs. They probably are good enough to go into New England or Kansas City and ruin their seasons. They look really good. They shut out Dallas towards the end of the season. They just they beat the Texans up and down the field. And their fans and the team just looked bewildered. They couldn't believe what was happening. And I can relate to that, to their fans, because I remember in the 87 season, the 49ers had home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And then in their first playoff game, they lost to Minnesota, and I remember that feeling. It was a terrible feeling. So I can understand what the Houston Texan fans are going through right now. But the Colts look pretty good, and they look pretty dangerous in the playoffs. Now the second game, Seattle and Dallas, that was a good game, but I wasn't all that impressed. I wasn't really that impressed with both of them. I mean, I know that their defenses are, you know, I mean, I know Seattle has a really good defense. Dallas's defense is good. It's not great, but it's good. And I can understand why both offenses may have been struggling because of that. But the teams just, I don't know, they just kind of struggled against each other. It seemed too many times in that game. But that's the kind of game it was. It was a hard fought game. They both wanted it the most, and the defenses played really well. But the Cowboys won. They move on now to, I don't know, either New Orleans or the Rams. So we'll see how that goes. But that was a gridiron game. They were really popping, hitting. The defenses were just, playing aggressive. So that's probably why you got that kind of low-scoring game in the beginning, and then both teams started to adjust, and then there was a little more scoring. But yeah, that was an amazing game, pretty close. But anyways, yeah, that's all I want to say. I I'll probably do a video in the coming days, maybe. But that's all I want to say, and everybody take care, and talk to you until the next video. All right, everybody, take care and have a good weekend.